Hey guys, Jacalyn here with Zenith Home Loans, and I have my friend Deborah Byrd with Plug and Play Social Media. Thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome. I had seen obviously on social media that you were doing these every week on Wednesday. And so I thought, let's flip the script and put you in the hot seat.
I
How's that
like it.
sound?
Sounds like a plan. Let's see what you got for me.
Well, so I want to start with just, your story of how you got into the business is not as normal as most. So why don't you start there? Like, what made you get into mortgage and kind of what's been your journey since?
Yeah, it's been an interesting one. So I'm coming up on 15 years in the business, and I got into the business because I needed a job. And my dad owned a mortgage company, still does. This who Zenith is, and he needed a receptionist at the time, and I had just been laid off of a job that wasn't a great job. It was probably the best thing that ever happened to me was getting laid off of that job because now I get to do this. And so I started as a receptionist at our company, and my dad just kept saying, just be a sponge and absorb as much information as you can. And so that's what I started doing. And then I moved into the processing department. And when I say department, it was me. There's only one person in the processing
You
department. We were pretty
yourself?
small. Yeah, just me, myself, and I. We were pretty small when I came into the business, and it was 07, 08. It was November 07. So right as things were starting to take a turn. So we weren't quite sure what was going to happen. And eventually I needed more help. And so I hired on more processors and was a closer for a while. And then I became our operations manager for a couple of years. And then I wanted to be more forward facing with the clients. I only got to see the middle. And
Mm.
I was only really involved as a manager when something was going sideways and everybody was mad. And I'm like, yeah, this isn't that much fun. So I didn't get to have any of that experience on the front end of like, here's how you can do this and how can I help you kind of thing. And then just kind of seeing it all come to fruition. So I only got that little middle piece and I was like, I kind of want to see the whole thing. And so that's when I decided to get my license and move into the sales side. And so this is where been on the sales side of things for 9 years now.
Wow. Well, so for those who may not know, we do social media marketing for all loan originators, and I can tell you they're not all created equally. And so the
Mm-hmm.
fact that you've worn every hat in kind of the manufacturing process is probably why your loans are so smooth and what could feel like it's just so easy when it is not easy doing loans at all. But what I think most would be surprised to know is what your educational background was, which I do think helps explain why you fight so hard for your clients. So why don't you
Mm-hmm.
talk a little bit about what you went to school for and how that even probably helps you today as an originator when you're fighting for clients?
Yeah, so I went to CSU, Colorado State University, and I have a degree in sociology with a concentration on criminal justice. With the intent at the time that I was getting the degree was either I was going to become a cop or I was going to go to law school. And my parents were very adamant about me not being in the police force because I was like, yeah, no, I want to be like on the streets. And they're like, yeah, no, you're not doing that. And then I saw how much work I was going to have to do to be in law and the type of law that I was interested in was not something that again that my parents were like, yeah, that just seems a little dangerous. I'm like, it just seems so cool. But of course I grew up in the world of Criminal Minds and Law and Order and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So study of human behavior and just taking care of people is kind of where that all came from. And then I grew up in a family of do-gooders, I guess is the best way to explain it. Like I've always service to others has always been kind of like an undertone in everything that we do and taking care of other people and treating everybody with respect and things like that. So I think that's just carried over into the kind of job that I wanted to do for people. So making sure that I'm just taking really good care of them as though they were my family or my friends.
It's so funny that you say, it's almost like when you're an originator, you have to be a detective. And I think for clients, sometimes they feel like they're guilty this as soon as you apply because you're
Yeah.
having to look through every line item on a, tax return or bank statement. So please know if you're a client, that's very normal.
Yeah.
But back talking about kind of that servant heart, you are one of the very, very few, if any others, that will take the time to serve your community once a week, like you've done by, interviewing, other experts. And so what kind of led to you doing this? Why do you do it specifically with this interview series?
So I've always wanted to find a way to do more business with my clients from the perspective of like, because like I love the majority of my clients and I become friends with a lot of them, which is really
Can you
fun
tell
for
us
me.
any you don't love? No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, it's not that I don't love them, it's just their files are really, really hard and complicated. And
Yeah.
it's just like, I really want to help you, but I just don't know if I can go through your tax returns again. So some just like no loan officer is created equally. Not all borrower profiles are created equally, and some are just a lot more complicated than others and just take a few more brain cells than sometimes I have access to. So that's the only reason why I don't love every single one of them. But so I wanted to find a way to do more business with people that I liked. And I wanted to find a way to just to kind of push forth a gratitude to my clients is like, hey, you trusted me. So how can I give back to you? And I couldn't really find a good way to do that. And there's really not a playbook for this work and this job. There's not great training. I mean, we've at Zenith have created a training platform that I think is pretty unique to the industry, but when I started, and it's new. And so when I started, I mean, it was all trial and error and see if it worked by doing it. And there wasn't a lot of help there. And especially when it comes to the sales side, like there wasn't a lot of guidance there other than here, just go get the leads and then the rest will come to you. And here's a couple of scripts. And it's like, okay, but how do I make these work? And when I came from a background of never having to like generate my own business, I just found myself kind of struggling a lot. And so I started figuring out that it was a lot easier to do business with people that I really liked. And so then I kind of gravitated towards that group of real estate agents and found ways that I could give back to them. And it's like, hey, well, these clients are trusting me with these huge transactions in their lives. And I'm having this hand and kind of like have this unique ability to kind of either set them on a really great path or not a great path. And they're putting just such a profound amount of trust in me, especially if it's their first time doing it. So how can I give back? I mean, I do the closing gifts and we bring the bottle of wine and all of those things, but I think I always felt like there was a way I could take it a step further. And that's just kind of how I am. I always want to go just a little bit further than what people expect of me. And so I had this idea that I was like, what if I could figure out a way to refer business to my clients? Because I've got plenty of clients who have their own businesses or generate leads for business like I do. And so I kind of through some trial and error, I tried a couple of things and like would reach out to clients. I was like, hey, if you need a referral or you take business based on referrals, like I want to help you. But that just didn't really kind of get my point across. And then through my work with you, you're like, hey, interview people. I'm like, I don't want to interview a local restaurant like this because it's a great idea. It's just not in my wheelhouse and it's not within my personality. And I'm like, okay, what if I used this, but I kind of flipped it a little bit and did it to interview my clients? And so that's kind of what this has morphed into. I've reached out to people that are in real estate or have something to do with real estate somehow and interviewed them because my clients are constantly reaching out to me for recommendations for all kinds of services. And it's occurred to me that I know a ton of people because of the work that I do. And so I was just like, oh, well, maybe this is how I do it. And so I kind of fell into it from that perspective. I mean, it's been something on my mind for a couple of years. I just didn't know how to execute it. And so that's kind of where it came from. I mean, I have a text message right now from a client that's asking for a window guy. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I have somebody. So being able to refer those kinds of things out regularly is really fun because then I get to see clients move through their life in these big milestones with like, they get engaged after closing and then they have kids and things like that. Like I get birth announcements and wedding announcements and things like that. I have it all in my gratitude wall at my main office. And now I'm starting to get to be a part of them growing their business. And so getting to see that too is just kind of been really fun. And then interviewing people who have maybe kind of a unique skill set that's not something that people would think that they need or know to look for, like the matchmaker I just interviewed. Like, I don't feel like a lot of people, unless you were actively like in the dating market and be like, I don't want to do online dating anymore. What else can I do? And it's like, hey, you can use matchmaking service and have a real life human do some of that work for you. So just making people aware of some of these industries that exist and why they're helpful.
Well, you're such a rare breed because for most loan officers, they're very high C, which if you're familiar with the DISC personality test, it's very high compliant, not usually as, high I personalities or,
Hmm.
big into relationships. So you can just tell every loan and every applicant matters to you to the
Right.
point where people have to trust you because they are financially naked when you see all their assets, their debts, their credit, and it just shows and is such a testament of who you are that you go beyond the transaction, which is so out of the norm. Because
Yeah.
most people, they just close and it's like one and done and they're on to the next. So
Hmm.
I'm sure your community and just your clients, for you to take the extra time to see on the loan app, like what they do for a living and what you could do to help them and grow their businesses,
Yeah.
just it's huge. And I can't even imagine, most are so fearful to get on camera. I have loan officers I'm begging to do video, and you're singing and
Yeah.
you're on social, like the
Yeah.
two biggest fears that most people have, like you just go for it and crush it. So
Yeah.
why not kind of explain a little bit behind the singing, Linder? And
Yeah. So if you'd asked me when I was 5 what I wanted to be when I grow up, I would have said a rock star. And if you'd asked me if I was 25 what I wanted to be when I grew up, it would have still been rock star. And now I'm not going to say how old I am, but if you asked me what I really wanted to do with my life, I would still tell you a rock star. I've loved singing ever since I heard Whitney Houston sing My Name Is
Mm.
Not Susan. And that is probably, I used to make my parents sit through like pretend concerts when I was growing up and stuff like that. And I had a fake band called Jackie G and the Blaze when I was like
Oh,
7
wow.
and stuff. So like music's always been a big part of me, but I've always had this like, it's, I'm sure hard to believe for some people now, but I've always had this incredible stage fright. So getting up on stage and speaking in front of people was always really hard for me growing up, and singing was even more challenging, and it always just scared the crap out of me. And so but I loved it, and I pretty good at it. I'm very good at it, I think. But I'm tooting my own horn obviously, so I'm biased, but it's something, it brings me a lot of joy. So I've just realize that I'm probably not going to be a superstar musician, and that's fine. And so it's just like, well, I still take voice lessons just because I always want to make sure that I'm always ready for something that comes up. I have a lot of friends that are musicians, and every once in a while I get an opportunity to come and sing with them. And then I get these random opportunities. Like I'm singing the national anthem this weekend at a cornhole
Ooh,
tournament. And so just
wow.
like really interesting opportunities like that where I just always want to be ready. And I'm a big smart aleck. And if you know me personally, you know that to be true. And so I was like, oh, what if I wrote a music parody? And I don't remember the first one that I wrote anymore, but if I always laugh really hard at my jokes. And so I think I am the funniest person in the room most of the time. And so that's just kind of how it's morphed. And so I'm just constantly like, what else could I do with this? And so anytime I hear something super catchy, I just start tinkering around with it. And that's how the singing lender kind of came to fruition. And now it's just a game at this point for me where I'm like, what could I sing now? I was trying to do one in the car the other day and I just couldn't get it together. And right now, I just have run out of ideas. So if anybody has an idea of a song that they want to hear mortgage parody to, for whatever reason, I have those lyrics in my head. So send those along because I will come up with something.
Well, this is exactly why I wanted to flip the script and put you in the hot seat, because I think it's so important for people to see the real person behind,
Mm-hmm.
not only that you're obviously a phenomenal lender, but just I was going back and looking at our initial discovery call notes, and I remember seeing in there you said you are a smart aleck and you
Mm-hmm.
like to be different. You don't want canned stuff. And so that I started to chuckle as soon as you said anyone who knows you knows that you're
Yeah.
sarcastic. And so
Yeah.
I love that wit, and when people feel like they know you, they can connect with you more. So
Yeah.
I'm sure with you doing these interview series, you've learned more about the different people. What has been like your favorite part about this?
I think my favorite part so far is just getting to know my clients on a totally different level. So
Mm.
when I'm in the transaction with them, I'm really it's all the numbers. And like I know who they
Mm.
are as people and I know their situation, but the main focus for me is the numbers and making sure the loan's approvable and making sure I can get them to the closing table on time with no issues, and just making it clean, making sure they understand what's going on, making sure I put them in the best loan and didn't miss any steps and things like that. And so after the transaction, I try to stay in touch and I connect with them on social media and things like that. But it's hard because I'm just like this lender person that's like trying to weasel their way into their lives and just be like, no, I want to support you in whatever way that I can. And so getting on this side of things and having them talk about something where they don't need anything from me, I'm just getting to learn about who they are and what they do and why they're passionate about it, has been really fun. So like I've gotten to learn really interesting things about some clients and even just some interesting industries that are out there and different perspectives. And what's been really cool is most of my clients are in their new house. And so they walk me around their house with the video afterwards. So that's been pretty cool. They're like, oh yeah, let me show you the kitchen. And so I'm seeing this kitchen that's been completely gutted. And they're like, we're going to do this here. And we did this here. And I'm like, I'll go back to the appraisal photos. And I'm like, oh, okay, I see what you've done here, because I never get to see the house. And so I only, like I said, I'm only seeing the financials. And so this is kind of a fun thing for me. So it's really, I mean, it's two-sided, but it's a little selfish on my part, to be fair. Like I genuinely want to help people, but I also I love my clients, like I said, and I want to know them, and I want them to feel comfortable enough with me as a human to know that if they reached out to me for a connection or they referred somebody to me, that I'm going to take really great care of them. And I feel like getting to know them on this level allows me to just create another level of trust there.
Well, so that brings me to my next question is, who is Jacalyn? So you get to find out all this stuff with your clients, and you get to know them from the core level.
Yeah.
So let's put Jacalyn in the hot seat. Who are you? What do you stand for? What are some things that maybe most of your clients would never learn about you, because you are the person who's the mad scientist behind the scenes, just putting numbers together, making dreams come true.
Yeah.
What are your dreams? What are your fears? What are some crazy things nobody knows about?
Yeah. I'd say, I mean, I always joke that I have a compulsive need to help people for whatever capacity, whether it's in lending or just in life. Like I happened to see some people at a restaurant the other day that were not, I don't want to stereotype anybody, but very clearly probably homeless or close to homeless. And I'm just watching them and I'm like, I kind of want to just buy their food. And like, those are the kinds of things like that's constantly in the forefront of everything that I do. And it's like, even if I can't help a client in a transaction, or if they don't end up using me for whatever reason, I don't go away, because I'm just like, well, there may be an opportunity for me to serve them somehow down the road. And so I think I'm almost helpful to a fault. So it's just like, well, no, let me just keep helping you. Do you want my code? I'll just give it to you. It's okay if I freeze to death. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things about me. The nonprofit world is very important to me. Like I said, I have a very servant heart, and I'm on the board of directors for the Boys and Girls Club of Metro Denver now. And I've been on different boards throughout my life, and just getting to see these different types of groups of people that are just genuinely trying to help on all these different levels, and just seeing what small acts of kindness can do to elevate a community of people or one individual person. And and with my clients, I see it too. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing with me. I mean, I want all of these people around me, and I want just this like warm, glowing, just like hug around me all the time. But then I also just kind of want to be left alone too at the same time, where it's just like, I just kind of want to sit on the couch and watch a movie by myself and just chill. So as I've gotten older, I've found that like I've made my home my sanctuary. Like we have this beautiful garden in our backyard that we just finished. And I love being out there, and I love that I've created that for myself, and that I have the ability to help other people create that for them. I think my biggest fear would be, I mean, it's completely irrational. My dad's going to kill me for saying this out loud, but anytime I don't have like a lead or business coming in, I'm like, oh my God, no one's ever going to use me again. Like, and I think that's just like a thing that hangs out back here for most salespeople, where you're always just like, I haven't heard from anybody in a while. What the heck's going on? And so, and I think that's true with everybody, where they're just like, hey, what if this doesn't work out? And I self-medicate with activities. So I'm like, well, I'll just keep doing all of these activities. Eventually it will turn into something. And so that's kind of how I combat that. And so that's part of why, with the slowdown that we've seen in the industry, it's given me the opportunity to take more time to do these kinds of interviews and things like that. So as stressful as that is in the industry right now, I'm grateful for this other opportunity I've had to kind of execute this plan, where I'm like, okay, now I can take all these, I have all these ideas, and I need to just like regurgitate them onto somebody and then have somebody put them out like all nicely and be like, okay, this is a good one. This is a good one. This is a good one. Let's revamp these ones and let's move on. And so I like being busy. But I love my downtime too. I have a 1.5-year-old, almost 2-year-old, and
that's busy.
That's busy. I've been without childcare for the last 2 days. And I'm like, first of all, you stay at home moms, I don't know how you're doing that. I don't just part-time work and part-time kid. I'm like, my husband and I are tag teaming and I'm just like, I'm wiped out. And I'm like, when can we take him back? So he goes a mile a minute. And I swear that kid, he just gets another burst of energy every 30 minutes, but he's so dang funny. And so that's
so cute.
He's so cute. It's a problem because people tell him that a lot. And I'm like, stop saying this to him because he's going to be like, I know at one point I'm just waiting for that. So getting to spend time with him, spending time with my husband and just getting to enjoy life pretty much. So I've as challenging as the slowdown in our business has been, I kind of welcome the ease of it because as nice as it was when we had all that business and things were just going crazy, it was hard to manage and it was hard to take care of yourself. And a lot of things went to the wayside and it became very difficult for me personally. And I'm sure this is true with a lot of lenders. It became difficult for me to deliver the level of service that I would have wanted to for my clients. And I hate that. And I obviously I don't want it to be slow, but just because it's my income and this is how I take care of my family. But I being able to take care of clients at a really high level is incredibly important to me. And so I will take that ability over the highest producing person in the room any day of the week. So I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to be a top producer, but I want to be a top producer and know who my clients are as humans versus numbers on a page.
Wow. Well, and it's so true when I don't think most people understand from your lens what we experienced the last couple of years with historical low interest rates. It would basically be like Black Friday every single day, people waiting outside, for doors to open. And so it's all lenders feel like their service may have been slacking a little bit, which, you could definitely be feeling that now. And so I just want to make sure on the record, you're probably going to kill me for saying this, but I know since you're such a giver, it's probably hard to ever ask or receive. So can we just make sure anyone who's listening to this, if you know someone who needs to refinance or to buy a home, can they please, how do they contact you? What's the best way for them to send someone over? Yeah. And then also even talk about, I know interest rates are higher than what they were, but we also are seeing inflation as high as it's ever been, entering a recession. At what point do you tell people, it's better to refinance, take that higher rate because of a net savings of the risk of putting all this, expenses on credit card where your interest rate's much higher. So kind of talk about, those items.
Yeah. So as far
as how do people
contact me? I mean, any of my social media platforms, I respond to all of them. I'm not a rock star, so I answer all of my own messages. I don't have
you are a rock star.
I'm a different kind of rock star. And then email, obviously, and things like that. So that's the best way to refer me is an email introduction. That's my favorite way because then I can send some information to the client. You'll know that I've got it. That's like kind of my, hey, I've got it from here. You can kind of take it easy. Handoff piece there. As far as the refinance piece and interest rates and things like that, I actually just put together a home equity class that I've been working on, and I'll be chunking it down into smaller, digestible little bits for social media, but just talking to clients about what you have access to as a homeowner if you purchased in the last couple of years and just, okay, you've got all this equity in your property because property values have gone up. Now what? Like, what can you do with that? If you've got a really low interest rate, like let's say you refinanced last year and you're at 2.5%, that's super cool. But if you've got $100K in credit card debt and you're paying 16 to 25%, like that is not a win. And it doesn't make sense. And it makes more sense to do a cash out refinance or a home equity line of credit and consolidate that debt and start making a smaller payment because the interest on your house is tax deductible. The interest on your credit cards is not. that minimum payment on those credit cards is not going to get you anywhere. And so then you have to go, okay, so do I do the snowball effect? And we talk through like how to pay down debt, because not everybody has a lot of equity in their home, or you're not a homeowner. So then it's like, okay, well, if I've got all this debt, what do I do? And I've got some good tactics for that, or strategies for that too, because that was the position I was in when I bought my first house. I was $30,000 or $40,000 in credit card debt. I was living at my parents' house and I worked for my dad. It wasn't that much fun. So it's like, brutal. If dad was mad at me, if I messed up alone at office, I was in trouble when I got home too. I'm like, so I don't want to live here anymore. And so I just like, I buckled down, and fortunately I was living at home. So I had the opportunity to not have a house payment, but I gave myself like $100 worth of spending cash per paycheck, which 15 years ago, or 10, no, it was 2010. So maybe $200 or $300 now. It wasn't very much, because that had to take care of gas and anything that I wanted to do. And the rest of it, I just threw at my credit cards, because I was like, I have to get out from underneath this debt, or this is just how it's always going to be. And that can feel very overwhelming. And the best thing you can do is talk to somebody who will help you put together a realistic plan that you can accomplish. And there's something to be said about putting those credit cards out on a spreadsheet or whatever it is that you're trying to do, and being able to cross them off and feel that sense of accomplishment. I see a lot of clients try to just make as big a chunks payments to each of their credit cards. I'm like, it's not going to work that way. You've got to throw as much as you can to that first one, and then roll it into the second one and the third one. And you can do that with home equity. You can do that with savings. Like I'd rather see, I get a lot of questions around paying your mortgage down faster. It's like, I mean, you can, but if you're a first time home buyer and you're in your early 30s, like, why? Are you going to stay there for 30 years? Probably not. And is there going to be a refinance opportunity in a couple of years? Probably. Whether it's lower rates or a shorter loan term, or you're just ready to move on from the property. It's like, are you saving for your retirement? Like, is there a plan? And there's a lot of people who don't have plans. And hey, I've got all of this debt, and it's like, okay, well, what are you doing with that? And so there's bigger conversations to be had other than, well, I just want the lowest rate possible. And I think that's the part that we're missing. And that's the thing that we've focused so hard on for the last 2 years, because rates were just so crazy low, and people took advantage of it, which they absolutely should have, and get that low rate. And it's like, okay, but now that was the best loan program for you last year. What's the best loan program for you in 2022 or 2023? Because it's probably different, or it might be different. And so I think it's important to have those conversations too.
That is powerful, because you're right. Most people, I'm sure, when they're contacting you, they're so interest rate focused, and there's a big difference between having the lowest payment or the lowest cash to close, or what's the real strategy. So how do you help your clients with strategy? Like, is there certain tech tools or things that courses you take? I mean, how did you learn to become, because most lenders are just give me your paperwork in exchange for an interest rate. How you have built your practice is very much it's very different. So kind of talk about that a little bit, of why you shouldn't just focus on rate, and what are things that you do differently than most.
I mean, the first conversation that I have with clients, I like to have an initial conversation before anything happens, if I can, if it makes sense for everybody, because I just want to understand, where are you in the process, and what's your timeline look like, and things like that, because that will help me generate next steps, because everybody's plan is going to be a little bit more unique than the last person's, and not everybody needs 20% down, $700,000 purchase price, 800 credit score. Like, that's just not how it works. And some people would be better served with an FHA loan for a variety of reasons, or utilizing down payment assistance programs for whatever reason, or maybe there is some debt that we want to pay off before the transaction. So I like to have those conversations first. I like to understand where your comfort levels are for payment and cash out of pocket, because what you qualify for and what you're comfortable with are not the same thing. A lot of times they're very different. You might be comfortable at $2,000, but you qualify for $5,000. And so I'm doing you a disservice if I show you what $5,000 a month looks like in purchase price, because you're scared of that number and you have no idea what it takes to get down to 2. And so it's important to have those questions and to understand the emotion and the mentality behind where you want payment to be. I always show clients something just a tiny bit outside of their comfort zone, so that they can see what they have access to, because I don't want them to shortchange themselves for the perfect property. if the right property comes along and maybe it's only 10,000 more than what they were thinking they wanted. So having a little bit more background there. And then I use mortgage coach presentations or total cost analysis to compare options side by side, because that's an easier way to explain it to people. It simplifies it and it allows me to go in depth at the same time, where I can itemize everything out. I use it as a coaching tool with my clients too. And it's a really great tool to use with my agents as well, for them to show clients options on properties, whether we're looking at seller buy down strategies or open house flyers, or here's the cost of waiting over time and things like that. So there's a lot of strategies that we have access to with that. And then, I mean, I'm a lifelong learner and just consumer of information. So I follow everybody from Darren Hardy and the Compound Effect to Renee Rodriguez and Amplify Your Influence. I've done some of his seminars. Just Todd Duncan and all of that stuff. So like I've been to lots of seminars. I'm constantly trying to learn from other people. And honestly, I like to see what other lenders are doing that's successful and figure out how to one up it and see. I was like, okay, that's really good, but how can I just a little bit better and just put my little signature on it and just maybe just create a little bit more service to the client. And when clients come to me and are like, hey, what's your rate? I'm like, well, I mean, you can Google the rates and get a pretty good idea, but that doesn't mean you qualify for that. And that doesn't help you figure out what's the best plan for you. So when I hear clients are like, oh yeah, I'm talking to a bunch of lenders, that's kind of a stopping point for me, because it doesn't matter. The rates are going to be very similar from lender to lender for the most part. And most programs are going to be pretty similar from lender to lender. It comes down to who's going to take the best care of you and who's going to look out for your best interest and who's going to make sure that they're getting you what you need and not what I need. Because I'm not going to be negatively impacted if your loan closes. If your loan closes, I'm getting paid. But if I screw something up or I set you up in the wrong loan program, I might screw up something in your world. And maybe you can't afford the payment or you're not comfortable or whatever the case may be. Like, we have a very unique ability to really set somebody on the right path or completely derail them. And I'm not interested in derailing anybody. And that requires a much deeper conversation about, why are we wanting to do this? Where are you at in your life? Like, what's the motivation? Because then I can figure out, okay, based on these pieces of information, this is what the puzzle should look like when we're done.
So I think what's so hard to understand with that is because most people judge salespeople on, well, you just want to get paid. You just want a commission. And so the fact that you're even showing people, and that's what I love about you and what I've noticed is when you show them and you're coaching them on options, you're not just showing them just in the now what your monthly payment would be with today's rate and your total out of pocket, which is what average lenders do. You show them how their decisions today could impact them over time, showing them like net worth or total interest paid. And so you go so far above and beyond when, let's face it, I mean, loan officers get paid when deals close. And obviously you want the loan amounts to be as high as possible. So it's so foreign, I think, for people to really trust and understand that any loan officer would have their best interest at heart and not just shoving down, oh, but you qualify for 900,000, not just 700,000. I'm like, let's take it up higher. Yeah. I think that's really hard and so powerful of what you said, because I think most would just fear. And there's a lot of distrust in the world right now, just with, politics, government, COVID, with numbers being shown, like people just don't know what's really real. And we all get the sense, and your commitment to just what you're doing with these interviews and the fact that no other loan officer would be doing that, and the level and depth of conversations you're having with clients of what's really their financial plan. Do they even have a financial plan? Because that's usually the first step. Yeah. So, I want to thank you for what you do, because not all loan officers care if it's, just a paycheck to them. This is obviously a career, and it's family owned and something ingrained in you from a very young age to really impact someone's trajectory. So thank you for going above and beyond and spending all the time and money with the courses that you take and learning tools to help coach your clients make better financial decisions. Because most loan officers don't do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it very well could be part of what I watched happen in 2007 and 2008, and just seeing how negatively that impacted so many people. And just wanting to, I mean, we pulled a lot of people out of that. And so I've dealt with tons of bankruptcies and foreclosures and short sales and all of that stuff. So like I've seen what that does to people. And I want to make sure I'm never putting somebody in that position as much as I possibly can. And just once we go through that initial transaction and we get them to the closing table and we get them into their house, then it becomes about, okay, what's next? What's the next plan with this property? What do we need to do? Should we clean up credit so that we are prepared for the refinance down the road? Or do we need to start paying down some debt and things like that? Like I have conversations with those about like that with clients. And I'll tell clients straight up, be like, hey, I'm uncomfortable with you having this payment. Here's why. But if you tell me you're comfortable, that's fine. But I need you to understand I'm going to spend the next 12 to 18 months figuring out how to get your payment lowered. And I've done that. I've had that actual conversation with client. I can see their faces now. And I'm just like, ah. I was like, and I went so far as I was like, I was just like, I went so far and I was like, okay, I'm okay with it because I can see your car's going to be paid off here. And I know we're not going to need daycare anymore here. And so that's going to improve your cash flow. Cause I'm just like, this payment's just so big from where you're at. And I don't want to do that to somebody. I mean, it's ultimately as the consumer, it's up to you to tell me what you're comfortable with. I always tell clients is like, I will never let you do something I wouldn't let my grandma do. And that's probably the highest level of trust in there that you can possibly do for somebody, because I feel like everybody's just like, oh no, my delicate little grandma, I can fit her in my hand. I have to take care of her. And that's how I feel about my clients. I was just like, I want you taken care of. I want you happy. And I want you to know what happened during the transaction. I don't want this to be like, yeah, I don't really know. So,
yeah. So what about with your agent partners? I know Zenith Home Loans, y'all have incredible ops. You have great loan programs, but why do you think it is that so many of them trust you and choose you from more of a business partner standpoint? And then what do you think, if you were going to share anything with them, especially I would say listing agents, the seller buy down strategy, for some reason, for some of them, that's really hard for them to understand, or they almost think it's like bait and switch. So kind of talk on those two things of your, business relationships and then the seller buy down strategy.
Yeah. The business relationship side, I think the biggest thing there is I take that piece of stress off the table for the agent. So they know if their client's working with me, I've got it. They don't have to get involved. They know if there's a problem, I have a rule that I don't come to the agent until I've already solved it. And unless it's not solvable, which is pretty rare, but it's like, hey, as long as I can fix this, I'm going to let you know, be like, hey, here's what took place, but I got it handled and we're just going to be able to move on to the next thing. And so clients are just like, agents are always like, it's so much better when my clients are working with you because I don't have to worry about kind of what's next and what's happening, because I know whatever it is, you'll figure it out. I had a text yesterday with a client and he's just like, it's figure outable, right? And I'm like, yeah, I already got it handled. We're done. So we're good. And he's like, okay. And then as far as like the listing agents and stuff, what I've been doing with those is just showing them how much, like, hey, if you take $10,000 off the purchase price, like that's only going to help the buyer this much per month. And I don't want to say number out loud because I'm probably going to get it wrong. So it's only going to help you so much. But if you take that same $10,000 and you buy it down towards the rate, like that could save them maybe a full percent, 0.5%. And like that the interest rate makes such a big difference in the payment. So dropping the purchase price 10 grand is probably not going to change anybody. It's not going to blow anybody's mind anymore. And so instead, especially in a rising rate environment like we're in right now, doing those buy downs makes so much more sense for the consumers. And it's going to keep a lot more money in your seller's pocket. And I think that's the biggest thing for listing agents is like, to make the same payment adjustment here, you're going to have to drop the price 50 grand. Like no one in their right mind wants to drop their price 50 grand if they don't have to. But if I can accomplish the same goal and do that with $10,000, sellers happy, they get their net proceeds, buyers happy, they get the payment they wanted, and you're happy as a listing agent because now your commission's based off of that higher price, which is what we were aiming for to begin with. And so because it's a lot of money, it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of stress for agents right now because they're having to put up all of that extra money up front for listing photos and all of the marketing stuff that they're doing now and things like that. Like everything has changed. Like we're back to like the old fashioned way of doing business where we've got contingent buyers and domino effect closing and stuff like that. It's funny how many of my agents have never done a contingent sale before. And I'm like, no, this is how it used to be. This is totally normal. Well, how do you even coordinate? And I go, you do buy side in the morning or the sale side in the morning, buy side in the afternoon. I have title company number one, wire to title company number two. Everybody's happy. And so, I mean, it's all work outable. It's all doable. We just have to kind of change our thinking. Like, it's not what it was the last 2 years. And I don't want it to be personally. So I like this environment a little bit. I wish rates were just a smidge lower, but I'm cool if I never see a 2 at the very beginning of a number again.
Well, okay. So then final question. If you were going to go to a convenience store, say it's a road trip,
Okay.
what 2 things, you have to pick a snack and a drink. What are those go-to 2 things that you're taking on a road trip?
That is a good question. Okay. If it's a random hole in the wall gas station, then I would want a cherry mash because no one sells those anymore. If they don't have that, then I would go for 3 Musketeers. And then
I don't even know what a cherry mash is.
So good. It's from like the 80s. It's just riddled with sugar, but it's like a cherry mash, like nougaty center, and it's covered in chocolate with peanuts in it. It's delicious. It's like probably 150,000 calories in just this one little thing, but they're so good. Or 3 Musketeers. And then I have to eat the chocolate off the sides first before I eat the inside. And an unsweet iced tea of some kind.
Interesting. Okay.
Or something
now we
salty.
all know.
Well, now I don't know. So now I'm like, I got to go to the convenience store and see what they have.
If you had to pick a chip, what are like your go-to chips?
Pringles.
Regular?
Just regular plain old Pringles. They're so good.
I didn't think this could be complete without at least knowing if you're making a pit stop. What about like favorite restaurant or favorite type of food? Do you have a
favorite restaurant in town is probably this restaurant over in the Highlands called Duo. They're all farm to table. I know they've got a few other states, but they're really good. It's a rotating menu and it's all based on the season. Their service is always incredible and the food is amazing. And it's just traditional American farm to table. Food type is hard. I have an autoimmune disease and a bunch of food allergies. So if I'm ignoring that fact, it's Italian food. But I can't do dairy or gluten, but a big plate of traditional Italian homemade pasta would be right up there for me.
Yum.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for letting me flip the script on you.
Yeah.
Put you in the hot seat. I hope everyone got to learn a little bit more of some of the behind the scenes, deeper side of Jacalyn. And, my hope would be that anyone listening to this you will share it with someone who may need good financial advice so they can have that generational wealth plan and even, a home full of generational memories, because that's what it's all about. So thank you.
Absolutely. No, thank you. I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to help me do this and for helping me come up with all these fun ideas that I get to execute now.
Yeah. Well, you actually execute.
I know. See,
it's crazy.
I'm a really good listener, you guys.
You are. And very coachable. I'm like, heck yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you again for your time. And thank you everybody for tuning in. And we will see you next week.